In the spirit of fostering community and encouraging campus-wide alignment, we are so happy to be able to spotlight with our session 3 professionals and emerging professionals from the Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning Commission. Long-standing leaders in documenting and interpreting the many dimensions of the Black experience in Prince George's County, led by the Black History Program of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. Here today to introduce the session, spotlighting some of the recent work of the program and the commission, is the manager of the Black History Program, Dr. Dennis Doster.
So good afternoon, everyone. I must also acknowledge before I begin that I do wear another hat for this academic year as an adjunct faculty member in the Department of History, where I've had the honor to teach a course on African American public history and a course currently on Black history and culture of the DMV. And so I think those are two very pertinent courses to the work that the 1856 Project is doing. And we've had a chance already to take the students to them. So I'm thankful for what you all have done and are doing. Also, on behalf of my colleagues and our amazing interns with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, I'd like to just say thank you for being invited to participate. Often in the Washington region, local history institutions are obscured by larger institutions like the National Archives, like the Smithsonian. So we are very grateful to have a seat at the table with the 1856 Project. I went back and forth on what I wanted to say today, and I think our bios are in the actual program, so you have that information. But I do want to share, hopefully, a very brief story with you all that I think really speaks to the moment that we're in right now. Late in the evening on Sunday, October 19th, 1924, police in Laurel received word of a domestic disturbance in the village of Merkirk. They learned that an African-American man by the name of Edward Brooks had physically assaulted and possibly even shot his wife, Georgiana. A warrant for Brooks' arrest was quickly drawn up, and the town officer on duty, George Broadner, left Laurel and headed to Merkirk, accompanied by 3 state police officers. Upon reaching the Brooks residence, the officers discovered that neither Edward Brooks nor his wife were there. But after interrogating those present in the house, they learned that Brooks was probably hiding nearby at the residence of Lizzie and Thomas Higgins. The 4 officers traveled the short distance to the Higgins home. Broadner and one of the state police officers burst through the front door and began searching for the wanted man, as the 2 remaining officers waited outside. A few minutes later, 3 shots rang out from the yard of the residence. Mrs. Higgins and the 2 officers within her home rushed into the night air to find Officers Scanlon and Olexley standing over the lifeless body of a Black man they had just shot, whom they believed to be Edward Brooks. Within a few minutes, the officers discovered they were wrong. In fact, they had shot 31-year-old Omer Weems. They had killed an innocent man. Omer Weems was a native of Beltsville, and he had served in the United States Army during World War I. After returning from Europe, he started a family in Merkirk, so one of those communities along Route 1 that Mrs. Sharps-Jones mentioned earlier. And so he started the family in Merkirk, and he obtained employment as a caulker with the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission. On the evening of October 19th, Weems was most likely stopping by the Higgins residence on his way home to his wife Susan and their 2 small children, 6-year-old daughter Laura and their 4-year-old son Omer Jr., when he was confronted by a plainclothed police officer brandishing a gun. Surely in fear of his life, Weems turned to run, at which times 3 shots were fired. One of these shots resulted in a bullet to the back of Weems' head. And once the officers discovered they had shot and killed the wrong man, they quickly departed from the scene, leaving Weems' lifeless body on the ground in a pool of blood. Omer Weems' death evoked outrage among African Americans in the community of Merkirk, as well as those living in other areas of Prince George's County, and even in other areas of the state of Maryland. The Baltimore Afro-American newspaper provided considerable coverage of the incident, even using it to launch an attack on the Democratic governor, Albert Ritchie. In December 1924, 2 of the state policemen were placed on trial, charged with manslaughter. Ultimately, the judges presiding over the case in Upper Marlboro found that the officers Scanlon and Alexi were guilty of this charge, but a guilty verdict did not carry a prison sentence. Instead, each man received a fine of $500. And following the sentence, the editor of the Baltimore Afro-American proclaimed with an air of disgust, "Is human life worth no more than $1,000? And so, unfortunately, 100 years later, we are still lamenting the little to no value placed on Black life, as today we mourn the death of Tyree Nichols. And so, beyond this obvious connection to what's happening today, I also share this story of this tragedy from Prince George's County history in order to emphasize, as our keynote address maker indicated, the power of place and the need to uncover these local stories and history as we contemplate the more familiar narratives. And so these local narratives honor the ordinary as well as the extraordinary and have the power to create more immediate and personal connections as members of the Prince George's County community, which includes students and faculty here at the University of Maryland, as well as students and faculty at Bowie State. And so as we all together grapple with the legacies of slavery and the lessons of the past, that they may be applied to the present. And that really is the work that we do through the MNC PPC Black History Program, as well as all of our historic sites, as we strive to create more inclusive narratives. And so you'll hear a little bit about that today, and so I'm going to turn this over now to my esteemed colleague, the director of the Riversdale House Museum, Ms. Maya Davis.
Thank you, Dr. Doster. It is really my pleasure to pivot today. Most times when I'm before audiences like this, I say, hello, welcome to the Riversdale House Museum. But today, I am so grateful to Lael Hughes-Watkins and Dr. Joni Floyd. I was determined that today I was going to call her Dr. Joni Floyd. I've known her for many years, and I keep referring to her by her maiden name, Joni Jones. And I was so determined that I was going to get up here today and say Dr. Floyd. So thank you so much for the invitation. This is really a full circle moment for me. I stand before you as someone who has had over 20 years of public history service in both Washington, D.C. and Maryland. But looking out in the crowd, I know at least, I would say, 65% of the people in this room. And so it's such a full circle moment for me. Coming from the Historical Society of Washington, D.C., and then seeing some of my colleagues from the Maryland State Archives here, some of the people that serve on the board with me at the Maryland Center for History and Culture. And then just, I have to give honor to someone in the room that probably wasn't expecting it, but coming from the Maryland State Archives, they allowed me to take up space. And I know what it means to have intentionality behind this work. And because I was allowed to take up space at the City Museum for an organization like the Historical Society of Washington, which had traditionally left out voices like mine, and then to go to the Maryland State Archives and be allowed to take up space. And I have to give honor to Elaine Rice-Bachman, who is here today. She is the first woman to ever lead the Maryland State Archives. And it's because of people like Elaine and the Chris Haleys and the David Armentis and Allison Seilers who do this traditional work of taking up space that I feel that it was important for me to continue that work as a part of my legacy and create pipelines for students of color to do this work. I'm entering into my second year. March will be my second year with the Prince George's County Department of Parks and Planning as the director of the Riversdale House Museum. And as an HBCU graduate, I know the disparities and the inequities that exist in spaces like this for all of my lifetime. And so I think as we kind of do this hard work with our community of stakeholders, it was really my honor to kind of take that and have that be expanded into the work that I do at the Riversdale House Museum. When I first started, I was informed that we would receive an additional funding source in our budget to do inclusive interpretation, and this became the work that we're doing in our division, the Natural and Historic Resources Division. And my first move is recognizing that we did a lot of work with the University of Maryland over the years, and we will continue to do that work, but I wanted to bring in people who were at the community college level as well as Bowie State University. So in 2022, I established a minority internship opportunity for 2 students of color, Marcus Suero and Lauren Colon, who you see before you. Marcus is a recent graduate of the Bowie State University, and Lauren is a senior. So she will be graduating soon, and then that work was able to actually permeate throughout our division. I work closely with Dr. Doster to talk about how we can then make this a part of the norm for the work that we're doing. And so they were able to then move that into the work that Artura Jackson, my esteemed colleague here, who is the historian of the Black History Project, but also a site manager at the Ridgeley Rosenwald School. And then she actually had Marlin actually come in and work on a community project. And it really is powerful when you have people who are of the community, who are in Prince George's County and will stay in Prince George's County long after they actually leave our program, and they can actually impact the work that we do. And hopefully they're the next generation of change agents who will look at the pipeline and make sure that there's equity in the work that we do. So today, before I get started, I just want to give you a brief introduction to all of them. Artura Jackson, as I said, she is the historian for the Black History Program, which I have to give a nod to. Before there was ever any inclusive interpretation work being done by our historic sites, it was the Black History Program that everyone depended on to do the Black history work in PG Parks. They have an amazing run at doing a Juneteenth celebration, which is just so amazing. This year, after the pandemic, they had 8,000 visitors, and I was honored to be in their graces. And so it shows you the power of inclusivity and people feeling a part and a sense of belonging. But Artura Jackson is a public historian who specializes in gender studies, 20th century United States history, and African American history. She is the site manager of the historic Ridgeley Rosenwald School, and she is also the historian at the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission Black History Program. Lauren Colon is a senior at Bowie State University, where she is majoring in history with a concentration in historical management. Her interest in history began as a child as she was intrigued by her family's oral history, passed down through generations on life on the island of Puerto Rico and in the Bronx, New York. Marcus Suero is a recent graduate of Bowie State University with a bachelor's degree in history. From childhood, learning about historical events and hearing stories about his grandparents' lives gave him the passion to pursue history as a career. And Marlin Stewart is a junior studying history at Bowie State University. During the summer of 2022, he served as a summer collegiate intern for the Ridgeley Rosenwald School under the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning. And with that, I will say move forward with the slides so they can start and come to the podium.
Thank you, Maya, for that wonderful introduction. I would be remiss without saying I'm so fortunate to work with these amazing students. The future of history is very bright. These students are from Bowie State, and as I stand here at the University of Maryland, I think of Richard Collins, who was one of their classmates, students at their school. So they're doing the work to continue to tell this story. But like Maya said, my name is Artura Jackson, and I'm the site manager at the historic Ridgeley Rosenwald School. And this summer, we launched an oral history project. We got funding from our division office. Up until this year, we didn't really have the funding. We're re-envisioning Ridgeley, and so thinking about it, but we got some funding this year to do some really great work at the school. Ridgeley Rosenwald School was built in 1927. It was one of the 27 African-American Rosenwald schools built in Prince George's County of the 150 in the state of Maryland. It has been in operation in some way, shape, or form since 1927, serving as a school, a special education center, a bus lot, and today as a museum. It is located in the shadows of FedEx Field off of Central Avenue, and has been open to the public since 2011 as a museum. As Maya said, we began the process in 2019 to move towards inclusive interpretation. This picture is a picture of our division to show you the broad spectrum of the work that we do in MNC PPC. But we are working to tell this story, and Black history needs to be reinterpreted too. As was shared earlier, that we have to continue to go back and look back and to talk and think about what we're doing. And so the Black History Program was not excluded from inclusive interpretation, even though we were the face of inclusive interpretation for a very long time. And so at the Ridgeley School, we identified 4 areas of research interests that we were interested in, and the best way I thought to get started was to talk about it through oral history. I'll let Marlin introduce himself.
As said before, my name is Marlin Stewart. I'm currently a junior at Bowie State University. And over the summer, I was able to work with the Parks Department, PG Parks Department, at the Ridgeley Rosenwald School site, conducting an oral history project.
So why oral history? Why we selected to do oral history, I think that the spoken word is some of the most powerful words that we have, in particular in relations to African American history. Sometimes that's the way that we find out the story. Somebody passes down the word, oh, this happened, do you know this person, do you know their name? You call someone like Ms. Vi or Dennis or Maya and you ask them, did you know this person? Who's that person? How did you spell their name? Where were they from? And so a lot of our history comes from the spoken word, in particular, in relationship to Black history. And so we were thinking about time. Time is of the essence. Our school was built in 1927, and our oldest alumni, or the alumni who we had the most relationship, died in 99. And we had done oral histories, but we had not done an updated one before she passed in 2020. So I really wanted to reach out to alumni, but also people in the education community, because we know a lot about Rosenwald schools, but Prince George's County has a rich and complex education history with busing and segregation and failure to integrate, and busing happening all the way up until the early 2000s in Prince George's County. I thought it was a topic worth delving into. We also looked at historic preservation because the Ridgeley School was saved and preserved by the work of an African-American woman who was interested in telling her story and her family's story. So we wanted to talk to the people in that community and who were in the 4 categories that we were looking at. So like I said, the goals of the project were to begin to document and preserve history of our community. We have an aging population. Like I said, time is of the essence. Some days people are here one day and they're gone the next, and we don't get to take their story. So if you ever have the opportunity to take someone's story down, just use your phone. It works magic. Identifying new areas of research interest. What we were hoping to do through this project was to listen to the stories that we were hearing and to find places that we could go next in our research. Like I said, we had identified preservation, Rosenwald schools, busing and segregation, and then the Ridgeley community as our 4 kind of areas. But through this, we were able to learn about different topics and different people who we should talk to next. And to create a shared authority. Because we are a government agency, and we operate this building, we take this we don't take it, but we operate it, and people often walk away from historic buildings. We want to have a shared authority in the work that we're doing, that if people feel that their story is important, they'll buy into the work that we're doing, and we can save more schools and more buildings and tell more stories. So it was important to show the community, one, that we wanted to listen and we wanted to hear from them. Okay, I'm gonna let Marlin talk about the process.
So our process, so I started, this was my first time interning anywhere. So this whole experience was really new to me. And I was just eager and ready to learn how to do this. And so our process, we kind of came together. We did the research. We identified our 4 themes that we would be interviewing our interviewees with. And we ended up doing our research for it and formulating questions that we knew we wanted to ask our interviewees based on those 4 themes. So this is what we did. We reached out to many people. So we ended up interviewing 8 people, 2 men, 6 women. Our interviewees, of course, like I mentioned, they fit under those 4 themes. Some fit under multiple themes. And then this was in the summer of 2022, and we plan to, based on the information we collected, plan to research further, interview more people, and just expand upon what we found out. And this was at the Ridgeley Rosenwald School. I was able to conduct, I believe, most of the interviews at the Ridgeley Rosenwald School, and then a few of them happened through Zoom virtually. Okay, so I just give like a brief synopsis of like what I found out about this internship. I think as a student studying history, I tend to like read books and look at interviews and things like that, and that's how I gather my information to report, on projects and things. So this was a different experience of actually getting those stories firsthand and actually talking to people and asking the questions that I wanted to ask to get the information that I was looking for. So it was amazing to discover this local history. My family has lived in Prince George's County for a very long time, and I did not know about this history. I'd never heard about it. No one talked about it. I had no knowledge of Rosenwald schools. So it was amazing to learn about Rosenwald schools, learning about the experience of the children there, learning about the history of Prince George's County, education for Black children in Prince George's County, and the experiences that those children went through, learning about special education in Prince George's County and those experiences as well. So it was all new to me, and it was amazing to actually sit and talk to people and get those firsthand accounts of their experiences. Okay. So before I move on, one thing I would say, this led to further opportunities beyond the PG Parks Department. I was able to connect with people through this internship, and I was able to connect with people who were doing research on my own family's history. And through that, I was able to help them document and preserve my own family's history and find out more about my family themselves.
Marlin doesn't give himself enough credit. His great-great-grandfather was one of the first African-American doctors in Prince George's County. And so, like I said, we want to thank the people who helped. First, our interviewees. We were grateful for people saying yes. It varied. We knew some people we reached out to, some people we were given names, but these are people who we want to thank. And thank Maya for opening this opportunity. I had never had an intern. I had never supervised staff. And it has been an amazing experience to bring a young person in and introduce them to history and to see themselves in history. For him to find out that, someone's talking about your great-great-grandfather and that he went to the University of Boston, right? And so they're unveiling a plaque at the University of Boston because he was the first African-American to get a medical degree from the University of Boston. So to see that unroll and come to pass has been amazing. And I think it's important to reach back. I didn't attend HBCU, but to reach back to our young Black scholars, our scholars of color. Someone asked earlier, what can we do? Give students like this the opportunity to experience our history, to learn their history, to tell their story, because they are the future. I'm a native of Prince George's County. I love this county more than I love most things, and so a lot of them, and we're so passionate about our stories. So give us space, give them the opportunity to tell the stories and to do the work. Thank you so much for the time.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as Maya introduced us, my name is Marcus Suero. I'm a graduate of Bowie State University as of December 16th, so a couple weeks ago. So essentially during this presentation, Lauren and I are going to talk about both our experience at Riversdale as well as what Riversdale has done as far as their inclusive interpretation. So to start off, this is what it looks like. I actually got a chance to take this picture during my time. So it's, we can go to the next slide. Essentially, the Riversdale house was constructed between 1801 and 1807 for Henry Steer, left to be completed by his daughter, Rosalie Steer Calvert, and her husband, George Calvert. The property was over 2,000 acres, which stretched from a little college park down to about the DC border, which when you think about it is a very large bit of land. So looking at Riversdale, I had the chance to look over Rosalie's letters, discovered in the 1970s. They were published in 1991, looking at social issues, economic issues of early federal America. Riversdale has 77 different slaves over its time, including what we'd be talking about in the next slide would be the Plummer family. Sorry about that. It is a National Historic Landmark and National Park Service network to Freedom Site. 7 acres of green space, interpretive signage, historic garden, open hearth kitchen, and a visitor center make up what it is today. And it aims to provide a multi-vocal narrative. It has a variety of tours and programming and public events. And I will pass it over to Lauren to talk about the Plummer family.
Hello, everyone. Oh, wrong slide. Okay, so as Marcus noted, there were 77 enslaved families on Riversdale, and one that we really focused on during our time at Riversdale was the Plummer family. So Adam Francis Plummer was born 1819, and he moved from Mount Albion, which was also a property of the Calverts, to Riversdale at 10 years old. He marries Emily Saunders at the Fifth Street Presbyterian Church in D.C. in May of 1841, and they had 9 children together. Emily Saunders actually lived at a nearby plantation, and Adam would walk to and from each day to see her. So I think that really highlights some of the lengths that these enslaved families had to go through in order to be with each other and to just, experience some of the things that we take for granted today. He was taught to read as a child from a traveling pastor, and he started a diary that was later finished and published by his daughter, Nellie Arnold Plummer, in 1927, and it's titled Out of the Depths, or The Triumph of the Cross, and it's now digitized through the Smithsonian Anacostia Community Museum, which also holds the Plummer family collection, which is dated from 19th century to 2005. And it can be accessed through archive.org as well. And this is a photo of Adam and his wife, Emily, and this is a photo of his diary, Out of the Depths, or The Triumph of the Cross. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll actually start this slide. So this is just a detail of our individual internship projects. So I was the archival and digitization intern. So my project focused on organizing, archiving, and digitizing decades worth of Riversdale's institutional documents. So think meeting notes, past programs, research documents, and also lots of archaeological reports of the grounds.
And as for my part, I was the transcription intern, so my position was to assist Riversdale in going through the 7,000 documents and trying to find basically information on the enslaved population who were there before. So I assisted in going through the papers, transcribing what was written, mostly by Charles Calvert. And we conducted research to determine if the documents related were of indentured or enslaved. Going over some internship highlights, a couple discoveries that we made. Not on my part too much. Although I did go through all 7,000 documents, I wasn't able to go through the entirety of all of them. So it was more of Charles's day-to-day life, selling different things, but mainly we were trying to find anything on the enslaved population.
We're also going to include highlights about enrichment and development, and I also put this phrase carte blanche on there, and I'll go more into detail on what those mean to us. So I am sorry to say that I don't have any extraordinary discoveries of my own at Riversdale, but this is just an idea of the many documents I had to go through when trying to organize and archive all of these documents. So just like I said, past programs, research documents. I would say one of the most notable things I found in my research there, I came across a lot of information about one of Riversdale's related properties, Cherry Hill. And I came up on a will, like lots of wills and details about the family that was buried at that site. So that's just an idea of my discovery.
So we had the pleasure of taking field trips during our time at Riversdale as well. A couple of them here would be the Ridgeley Rosenwald School up at the top. We also were able to build a museum in the works right now, which is the Concord, which you would see in the far left. And at the bottom right here was from a trip that we took to the Maryland State Archives. So we got a chance to actually look at documents from the early to mid 1800s. So all of that it was a great time to have. Being two minority students, we probably wouldn't have had this kind of opportunity otherwise. So having the opportunity to go to different sites to see things that we probably normally wouldn't be able to see was an amazing opportunity. And thank you, Maya, again, for that. We really appreciate it. So what we gained from our experience. We gained practical experience for current and future roles in graduate studies, established connections with the Riversdale team and teams from other sites as well, and mentorship. As I said, again, Maya, thank you. Thank you so much. As well as many of other people. Artura as well has been amazing for everything that we've been able to do. So yeah, we've been able to gain quite a bit of experience from this. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for a wonderful presentation. I will admit, in regards to those Calvert family papers, one, I have to thank our Riversdale Historical Society. I know there's somewhere in the audience here today for having the fortitude to connect with many of the Calvert family descendants to bring those records to our site. Our staff member, Jen Flood, who is here today, she actually has done a lot of work with the records that we have found on the enslaved. So we hope to be able to share that information with you through some of our interpretive programming, including our guided tours that we do. I have a couple of questions that I formulated for our group. One thing I do want to point out is that this internship, we decided that it would be a paid internship. I come in from the Maryland State Archives. Coming from the Maryland State Archives, we always had and were fortunate to have paid internships in partnership and collaboration with other colleges and universities, as well as grant funding that we had sought out. And it was really awesome for me to come here and then have division support to determine that we could use those funds to actually create this pipeline for students. And we know that it's so necessary, as Gretchen Soren points out, that we have opportunities to pay these students, because otherwise, this just cannot happen. There are so many inequities in terms of being able to access places, get there, drive there. You know what gas costs? I know my gas issues are already something. So, we just wanted to kind of keep that in mind. And then I knew that we would be for a group of people who are in this field of history, and it's okay that we can share the space. We can share opportunities with students from the University of Maryland, who I agree should also be paid, but we also have to realize that we have to bring forward voices like Marcus, Lauren, and Marlin to the table to sit side by side. As I go through this summer's internship, I am going to be more intentional on a different level. Riversdale will be 30 years old this year as a museum, and we wanted to work with our descendant community, which is what Ms. Vi so graciously helps us with, and we have descendants at the table from both the Calvert and Plummer families. So we are going to have 2 internship opportunities that are 30th anniversary opportunity for a Plummer and Calvert descendant. We have identified them. So we're really proud about that. But there's also 2 students in here who've reached out to me, so we're going to try to see how we can work you in. So we may have 4 interns, and hopefully we will be able to kind of help that trickle through our entire division. Our division chief, Chris Fanning, has dedicated and committed that she would make sure that we can actually move forward with these types of internships for not just my site or the Black History Program, but all the historic sites within our division. So we're proud of that work. And I don't want to take too much time from the audience if someone has questions, so I will open with a question. Artura told me not to ask her anything, to save it for the intern, so I won't bother Artura. But I just wanted to know from each of the interns, why is it important to preserve local history and have diverse voices present in doing this work?
Okay, so I'll start. So I want to say, I think personally it's important to highlight local histories, because I think all history is important. It's important to document not just the well-known parts of history, but how it affected local communities and how they were impacted by it and how they impact those histories as well. Again, I would say, like, on a personal level, the history of Prince George's County, because my family has lived here for such a long time, is my history as well. And those the residents who live in Prince George's County, this is their history. So, you know, as you understand the history, understand what makes this county, you know, you understand your place in it, I believe.
Thank you.
I believe it's important to preserve local history because for the simple fact that if we don't, it'll be lost. And I think that's in itself is a grave injustice to lose history. I also think it's just important, whether you're a visitor, whether you call a place home, it's just important to understand the history of where you are at present. I think we all have that responsibility.
No.
Oh, okay.
So my colleagues pretty much said what I was going to say, but I wanted to include something on diverse voices. As I previously stated, having this opportunity to learn about a site that I saw many times growing up. I also grew up in PG County, have a long family history in PG County as well. Passing by a building that maybe have housed your ancestors at some point is powerful in itself, because one thing that we as African Americans tend to have to deal with is dealing with different scenarios where we don't know the history of something that we were involved in. Knowing how much African Americans were involved in the building of Washington, D.C., of this county, of Riversdale, is incredibly important. And I think just having diverse voices study this, it brings about our importance as well. It shows that we are part of this country as well. It also plays into the history as far as our history was cut off, but we built our own. And so understanding that, I feel like is incredibly important.
So now I'll open it up for people to come to the microphone and ask a question of the interns.
Hi, so for the interns, I was curious about how your experience here working at Ridgeley and at Riversdale, is that something you're going to continue to work on, either at those places or continue to that work elsewhere, and also how this experience has shaped maybe what you might want to do career-wise after this ends?
Thank you for your question. I definitely want to continue this work. I am in my last semester of my senior year, so I'm in the home stretch. So I am hoping to go on to grad school to focus in oral history. That's just a really big interest of mine. The specific work that I did at Riversdale, I don't think I will continue. I think we joked about this during my time that the good thing about internships, especially this being my very first internship, was that it just gave me an idea of what archiving is. When I came in, I was still confused on whether I wanted to go the archiving route or the curating route. And I now know for sure it's definitely curating.
So I do want to continue to volunteer at Riversdale. As I graduated already, but I already started to work at the National Building Museum, becoming an educator there. So I want to continue on that path. Also grad school, probably more in public history. Also, as Lauren said, probably not what I did at Riversdale, just because I like to interact with people a little bit more. But probably it's something along the lines of community outreach, I believe, is my calling.
I would say, to add on, I really enjoyed my time at Ridgeley, and this was my first internship, so I really went into it just ready to learn and ready to explore the options. I always get asked, when people ask me what am I majoring in, the next question is, so what are you going to do with that degree? Like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, that's a good question. I really don't know. So this was an opportunity for me to see what options there are out there for me, and like I would love to continue like with the work at Ridgeley. I think it was such an amazing experience and such an amazing thing to learn about. You know, the rediscovery of this or the discovery of this. For me, it was just amazing, and I would love to continue to do it.
Well, thank you for your answers and for talking about your work.
So I just got the 2-minute mark. I will let Antonia ask her question.
I already asked a question on a panel, so.
Okay. So we'll just take this last question.
Thank you. I appreciate your work at Riverdale. I think I wanted to, it's more of a statement, I wanted to encourage in the interpretation to focus on the economics. You know, the Calverts economically contributed to sort of this institution of where we are. They had interconnected enterprises throughout PG County, I think, at Albion as well. They probably moved around their labor force, their conscripted sort of labor force. And I think, you know, in addition to, I mean, African Americans didn't just play a part. I mean, you know, sort of the underpinnings of a lot of sort of where we are. And there's an economic piece to that. So the economics and the business is important, I think, to add texture to the story. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, I just want to thank our lovely panel, and I will call back Dr. Joni Floyd.